Hi there, welcome to our MAD PD presentation on student blogging, writing in a 21st century classroom. Joining me are my son Miles, who happens to be in my writing class, my principal Jenny Goldman, a fellow teacher Leslie Hatlin, and another fellow teacher and my best friend Nettie Farrar. So they're going to go ahead and mute their mics for me, and we're going to start the presentation. Just a little bit of background is that I decided about a year ago that I wanted to be a blogger. So I started my own blog at foreveralearner.weebly.com. And then I saw what benefits I got from it and decided I wanted to do it in my classroom as well. So I had my students start blogging. I think our first blog went out within like 3 weeks of school starting. And so it was an interesting experience. So we're going to talk a little bit about what they've gone through and how blogging works for students. So here is my presentation. Taking just a second to go to full presentation mode here. All right. Just a background about me. I also have on here a link to some staff blogs for Simi Valley Unified where I work. There's a few of us that are blogging, including my principal, who is down in the chat. It's an online platform. It allows for a lot of personal reflection. I think that's what kind of started me with it is sharing not just what I'm doing in the classroom, but it also shared with everybody what my process is. And then by doing that, I feel that I'm getting much better. And it's especially for students an authentic audience. There's no more of this, I'm going to write it, my teacher's going to read it, maybe comment, get it back, and then we're done. Where here they actually have people outside the classroom that can see what they're doing and comment on it. What have they gained? The variety of topics that we've written about is so much more than just if we say, okay, this month we're concentrating on persuasive writing. I choose 3 of their topics per month, and they're always school or holiday related. And then they get a free choice topic each month, which has turned into a very interesting activity for the kids. And I'll let Miles share about that in a little while. They are totally engaged in it. It's funny, I have a very loud classroom because we do a lot of project-based learning and collaboration. And blogging, it's a half an hour of almost complete silence. And it's not that I've requested it silent. It's that they are so into what they were doing that there's very little noise. As I mentioned, their comments give students the ability to hear to someone other than the teacher just commenting on it. One of my students has, in the past, at the beginning of the school year, had a really hard time with periods and capitals at the beginning of his sentences. And I didn't comment on it, but many of other kids have said, hey, we can't tell where your sentences are, and this is really hard to read. And he is doing it much more often now correctly than if I just said, okay, fix your grammar. Another thing I've noticed is that some of my quieter kids that don't like to share with others in class beyond a group of maybe 3 have suddenly started to become really strong writers because it allows them to have a voice that they didn't necessarily have before. These are some blog examples. Many of my parents, they have a choice of making it a private blog where only people in our school can comment on it. And then certain people like their parents or friends that they have at home that can comment, or they have the chance to being public. So these are the parents that have said they allow their student to have a public blog, and please check them out. I have bolded a couple of them because these are students that have come a long way. One of them is my son, and I am going to talk about him. I embarrass him a little bit. But the other highlighted one is a student who was not a very strong writer at the beginning of the school year. And I love the fact that he, about 2 months into blogging, actually thought he was going to get in trouble for writing too much because he couldn't stop. He just wanted to get it all out, and his ideas have expanded big time based on that. And then I've also included a link to Linda Yolis. She is a teacher in a local school district. And she kind of started blogging with her, I believe, second or third graders a couple years ago, and has some great ideas for people. Some of the blogger platforms that we have looked into, I personally use Blogger because it works with their account that we have through school. I like it because it's free. The kids have put me on as their admin for right now. And then when they leave our school, as whether they're graduating as sixth graders or they are leaving before that, I can transfer those admin rights back to them. And if they leave our district, they can transfer it to their own personal Gmail account and continue that for the rest of their life, or they can just kind of let it go by the wayside. But I like the fact that they get to keep blogging, and they can have a record from either fourth, fifth, or sixth grade, whenever they started with me, all the way through 12th grade or higher. Another one that people use is Weebly. I use it for my personal blog. It's really super easy to use. It is free. The only thing I didn't like about it, that it was only good for one school year. And I wanted my students to be able to keep it longer than that. I know a very easy one to use, and a lot of teachers love it, is the Seesaw. The parents have links to the student blogs, and the parents can keep the blog at the end of the year, or a teacher could just download the information. EduBlogs is free and paid. You have to have a student email. Again, you can have it private or public, and there's many themes to choose from. KidBlog is another one. I had started that a couple years ago. They kind of changed it a little bit, so I don't know a whole lot about it, but I did include the link there so that you could use it. It is similar to WordPress, so if you've used that before, you are familiar with it. Commenting. This was something that I found early on. Kids didn't know how to do. They could read each other's, they could write their own, but they didn't know how to appropriately comment. So we talked about some rules for commenting. One thing that my class has for feedback, whether it's through the blogs or anything, is find a glow and a grow. So what was something you really liked about the blog, and what was something that they need to change or add more to, such as my student who forgot capitals and periods. Or a lot of the kids say, hey, I really like this. Could you have added more about it, or this one section? Always asking a question or make a personal connection. I did that too, and this is what happened with me. One thing that I make sure they do, especially because our kids are under 13, is only use their first names to maintain those privacy. And I let the parents know the same rules for commenting, because if a parent has their name as a commenter and has their last name, and they use their kid's first and last name, then it's no longer private. And then you get into those under 13 child privacy laws. Other resources that I have information about blogging. Ditch That Textbook blog by Matt Miller has several part on that. Pernille Ripp, the Center for Teaching Quality, Blogging is Homework and Grading. And then I also included a link to the parent permission slip that I got. A teacher friend of mine, teacher Miss Jamie on Twitter, did it, and I kind of tweaked it to how it works for me. So I included that as well for everyone who wants to try and get it. This presentation is done at other events, so I kind of threw in there time to get blogging. But this is back a referral to what I have. If you want to check out the link yourself, it's goo.gl/2i capital S Y capital L M, so that you can access all of those resources. I'm going to go ahead and go back here to the chat and see if we have any comments. And one of the things I said, I was going to embarrass my son a little bit. Sorry here, Miles. But one of the things that I loved about it as not just a teacher, but as a parent, is that I read his blog and he threw in something. It was a, yeah, I turned off the presentation, so you shouldn't be able to see that anymore. Oh, did I share presentation? No, I never hit the share button, did I? Okay, well, then I will make sure that link is on there so people can see it, because that was my fault. Sorry about that. We will, anyway, so he wrote about, I think it was a free topic, and he wrote about candy and music. And it was an interesting blog, But what I really liked about it is that he put on there something about how music gets him through the hard times. And so I'm going, okay, wait, this is my own child. What hard times is he talking about? And so I didn't see kind of where he was coming from. So that can lead to a good conversation that we had. So I'm going to go back here real quick and go to share that presentation since that was my fault. I do have a comment from Jenny. Students need to have digital portfolios at Point. Kinder parents are loving the Seesaw blogs and the ability to leave voice comments for their students on the assignments. I do like that aspect. I do have a lot of parents who do comment on my blogs that the students get. So it's not just other students that are doing it. Hopefully now you can see the presentation because I've now shared it correctly. I'm just going to quickly go through the slides so just so you can see it. I'm going to include the link later for you to do it. Most of it is just a share from the slides, information that I did kind of say. There's a little bit more on here. And then the link to all of the class blogs, the blogging platforms, which include the links. Here is the commenting, including a graphic that I got so that kids and teachers have that. And the other resources, which include the links. So sorry about not including that the first time. And let me shrink this and get back to the presentation now. Okay, there we go. Thank you. Sorry about that. And because we had the muted chats at the moment, I did not see that. So that was kind of cool. All right, so I'm going to open it up first to Miles. If you could comment. As a student who is required to do writing for me, not just as my son, go ahead and unmute your mic, Miles. Can you tell me what you like about blogging, about your collaborative piece, because I think that's really cool, and anything else you want to share?
I didn't hear you.
You didn't hear me. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to have you go back and share as a student that's a writing student of mine, not just my son, about how writing works for you when you blog. I want you to talk about your collaborative piece that you're doing because that's something that you and your 3 friends, you're the only ones doing that, and I think this is so cool. So I'm going to pass it over to you.
Okay. Blogging has really helped me with writing and grammar issues that I had in 4th and 5th grade. Like she said, me and my friends are doing a superhero story that's combined. So one of my friends has his part of the story, I have my part of the story, he has his part of the story. In the next blog, we're going to be, all the stories are going to be combined. To me, blogging is amazing and very helpful. It helps kids and adults interact with each other more than they usually do.
Thank you, Miles. I did want to add to that. I know that Superhero started, we were doing a lesson on onomatopoeia, and I thought, cool, kids will relate if it's a comic book. And so could they use onomatopoeia in a superhero story? And so now I know that their group of friends, and there's a couple other that have continued it every time they have free choice to continue that story. And then I just found out like a month ago that they were doing this now as a collaborative story where they're all adding to it. And how great that would be where if we just said, here's a writing topic, write a story, a narrative writing with onomatopoeia in it, how it never would have gone to that collaborative level. And I love that they brought that up. And it was not my thought when I started it, but how it naturally went that way. Mrs. Hatlin is saying, because she happens to be his teacher, that they're working on it when they have free time, even in her class, which is very, very cool. Mrs. Hatlin, would you like to, or Leslie, would you like to share some of what you've seen based on their blogging once they do go back to your room and they're not in my actual writing classroom anymore? You have to unmute your microphone.
Okay. So am I on now?
Yes.
Hey, hi. Woo. Well, one of the things that I was really excited about, because I do not believe in the state testing. Wait, am I still on?
Yep.
Okay, you just changed, Dan. I don't really believe.
I muted my camera for a second.
Okay. I don't believe in state testing really at all, but I will say this. For the first time as a teacher, I saw kids taking their time on the writing portion, the what is it called? The
performance task.
The performance task with English language arts more than I've ever seen before. My kids were not, I would say over 75% of the kids were not done with the testing after 3 hours because they wanted to write, and they wanted to write well, and they wanted to write ideas. Some of course, you never know which kid has what. Some kids have a narrative, some kids have a persuasive, some kids have a research project, but it didn't matter what they were having, they didn't quit. And I don't do any writing in my class really at all. I mean, of course, there's some carryover with language arts and social studies and science, but the majority of the writing comes from your blogging. And these kids really learned how to take their voice, I'm assuming, because I've never seen kids write this much before, take their voice, take their effort, take their time, and coming up with whatever their answers were. I can't imagine that they're not going to do well on state testing. And then just for me, it's been very exciting. There is another group in my class that sees you for blogging that is also writing a story. I don't know what their story is about, but the James group, they're also doing some kind of a writing thing too. So I've got two groups in my class. One, I'm a little bit familiar with the superheroes because they talk about it right next to my desk, so I can hear their story. And then the other group is a little bit more secretive, so I'm not sure exactly what theirs is about, but I don't really care because it's their writing, their ideas, they're excited about it. And I would say except for one student 20 years ago, I've never had any kids excited about writing ever until this year.
Yeah, and we were on the chat on the side while you were talking, and the students are much more comfortable with writing. And it doesn't seem to be just because we write more and more often, because I've had that in the past where we take 10 minutes every single day and we write something, or we make sure we write in math and social studies and all over. And they're just, because we've let it be more personal, and they know it's not just the teacher going to read it, it is that authentic audience, that their writing is naturally becoming better. And it makes a huge difference in not just when I say it's blogging time, but when we do write that persuasive essay. We just did one, and for our first real true persuasive essay, I got a much stronger quality from the students having had all of this practice part. So Nidhi or Jenny, would you like to jump in?
Hi.
Hi.
So I was thinking as you were talking about the authentic audience component, I hadn't thought about that piece before, about how if you're sitting down to write something and you think you're just turning in a piece of paper to your teacher, just one person, there's just a different level of motivation as compared to, I'm going to have an authentic audience. My parents can see this. My peers can see this. It's just really, that's an excellent point. The kids are loving to blog. I know that, but I have wondered as an administrator before how that contributes to their growth in writing overall, as opposed to your short personal blogs.
Right. Well, if you look at a story or a narrative or informational piece we wrote at the beginning of the year, and you compare it to what they write now, really having only a formal writing session once a week, and you look at the comparison beginning of the year to end of the year now versus what I had last year or the year before, where I still had that only once a week, really truly formal writing lessons. The writing right now is so much better. And having had the 6th graders back when they were 4th graders, and the majority of the 5th graders had me last year as 4th graders, I know where they started. And so I've seen what they were doing before versus what they're doing now. And I think that authentic writing piece is making a huge part of their growth.
I'd be really interested to look at the pre and post, samples from the very beginning to now to see the difference.
Right. And Nettie was saying, yeah, their voices are really starting to shine. It was funny. We were doing an activity the other day and I was previewing their intros so that I could see what it was before they got further in the essay. And one of the students, I didn't even have to look at whose name it was. His voice is so strong that I could call him over and said, you know what, I know this is yours. I don't even have to look at the name. And I got that partly from reading his blog so often, because if you only writing, 10 essays a year or, smaller pieces of writing, his voice isn't going to come through. But because I read his blog and he's got that time to really develop that voice,
right?
It's been a great experience for everybody on that. Excuse me. Nettie, did you want to jump in and add anything? We've got about 8 more minutes.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
I just wanted to comment that the voice is the big thing I've noticed. 2 things. One, I've noticed with Genius Hour, we're in our 2nd semester of Genius Hour, and their essays, we're doing an informative essay with Genius Hour, and that's where I'm really seeing a lot of improvement, stronger writing. But one thing I really noticed in reading their blogs, the voice, like I said, the voice, I could really see the voice of some of my students. And then I can share the blogs with the class and they can see what I'm talking about when I talk about the voice or the authenticity or the grammar. And I always check with my students ahead of time if it's okay if I share their blog, whether it's good, or not so good. And they understand that this is constructive criticism to help everybody. Seems to help because they can see each other's writing and we talk about it as a class. But I've noticed a couple students in general, I don't know that I really would have seen their strong voice in a writing essay, but on their blog. And the other thing, they highlight different words. They're playing with the font. They're adding images. I didn't even tell them to add images. I didn't even ask them to add images. They add images. They're just getting so creative with their writing and they're highlighting words so that they stand out. It's just amazing to see what they can do with it.
Right. It allows that creative component in their writing that if we say, here, write me an essay, they're not always going to bring in. So their presentation skills are going greater. And that's one thing I like is they're not, in my class, they're not required to just write the blog. They have to actually read each other's and comment on each other's that day when everybody's writing. And it doesn't have to be the blog they did that day. They could go back to a blog someone wrote, a couple weeks ago. And so they're really looking at each other's blogs on a regular basis. It's not just if I'm pointing out, hey, this person had a great essay, or how can we fix somebody else's? They're having to critically look at everybody's blogs. And of course, they have their favorites that they read pretty consistently. But every now and then I haven't read before or haven't commented on in a long time. And so their audience is building up, which makes them feel prouder. Hey, look, I've got, now 50 people have viewed my blog today. How cool is that? Versus, oh, the teacher got the paper. So it goes back to that authentic audience as well as the voice, and kind of all of that goes together.
Diane, is there a single place to access your students' blogs? Because you were talking about how they have their audience, because it's limited, isn't it, to who can see their blogs, right?
It depends. Okay, so if the parent has asked for private, then yes, I have it in a document, and since you're the principal, I told parents it would be shared with people on campus, and so I could send you the list of all my blogs. The ones that are public right now, because they're under 13, I took them off of search engines. But anyone who has their blog address can access that. And one thing that I did to help with some of that under 13 issue was that every single comment made by a student or anyone outside of school has to go through me first, so that we don't have anybody who's trolling and making inappropriate comments on student blogs. So I did build in that privacy. And then when I transfer that back over to the child, I will discuss with each child, okay, if you want to put it on a search engine, this is what you would have to do. That's something you and your parent need to talk about, especially as our 6th graders are turning that 13 by the end of the year, beginning of next year. They may want that part put on for them so that they can expand their audience, which it's all about how many views you get on YouTube or on your blog.
Yeah, it seems like a good conversation to have with the parent and the child together, and then
Yes.
they can decide that. Because this is all a lesson in just the digital citizenship as well.
Definitely. Yeah. And we talked about that before we even started blog. We made sure we covered all the digital citizenship, and we bring it up every now and then. Hey, remember, someone else is going to view it, and what should be an appropriate image for your blog, or when you're writing, what are you talking about that would, is it going to affect someone else, or is it something that anybody can read no matter who they are?
Right.
All right. Is there any other comments? If not, we're going to go ahead and sign off here. All right. I think we're good. So everybody go ahead and say goodbye or wave goodbye. And
Good job.
thanks everybody for joining, especially Miles. That was hard.
Good job, Miles.
Good job, Miles.